Initially, this was going to be a rant video titled Genshin Devs Are Lazy, but not so much anymore. I already ranted in my mind while I was trying to flesh out my thoughts in order to make this video. So the rage, for lack of a better word, has been cleansed out of my system. But basically, when I saw Skirk's kit details for 5.7 and I saw that she was going to be a cryo character, I was disappointed because I thought that her kit would include abyssal powers and not just in her animations. I felt like the devs were lazy for making her a cryo character and not introducing a new element. Since then, I have seen different people's perspectives and opinions on it. Some of these opinions are that the devs already stated in the past that there would only be 7 elements. It would be difficult to introduce abyssal power as an element and reactions with the current 7 elements. There might not be enough characters with abyssal powers now or in the future to justify spending time to code another element into the game, especially since we are so close to the end game now. It makes sense that Skirk uses an element from Teyvat and not abyssal powers, since abyssal power is basically a corrupted form of the 7 elements, as well as the game doesn't need new elements. What it needs are new reactions. I think that these are solid arguments. I also saw a comment somewhere where someone said that the explanation that the devs gave in a live stream, I believe, for Skirk using cryo is that she doesn't want to stand out, while she's traveling through Tevat or something to that effect. I haven't kept up with the live stream lately, so I'm not 100% sure if that's what it is or that was the explanation that was given or that's where the explanation was given. But even if that were the case, I think it's a cop-out excuse. I think they were either too lazy to do it or they didn't know how they would implement it in terms of having the abyssal elements react with the current 7 elements. That's my opinion and I'm sticking to it. Anyway, that's not what this video is about. The main reason I was disappointed that playable Skirk would be cryo and wasn't, using the abyss element or abyssal powers per se, is because of what it potentially means for future characters who are not from Teyvat. It means then that potentially these characters, if they are going to be playable, they would use one of the 7 elements from Teyvat and the devs would give a bullshit excuse to justify it. So for example, we saw Arlecki, she's from Canria, but she got a pyro vision, so she's a pyro character. We saw Capitana using cryo, even though he's from Canria, which is not a part of Teyvat. And then, this is not a spoiler or anything because it's too early to tell, but people speculate that Dainsleif will be a pyro character. Dainsleif is from Canria, which again is not part of Teyvat, so, why would he be using an element from Teyvat? Most importantly, the real reason why I was disappointed is because of Ryan Data. Ryan Data is my most anticipated unit. And this was even before the recent Teva chapter interlude teaser, The God's Limits. Like, I was just so fascinated with how strong she is in the lore. Obviously, she has done some terrible things. Not that she has done a lot of terrible things, but I was just so fascinated with how strong she is and her ability to create life with all the creatures that she has created, from like Durin and Elenas to, an entire human being in Albedo. And then, fast forward now where we learned that she has also at the heart of Nabirius, the shade of life. Like, this character is just different. I hope that she's playable, and I would hope that if she's playable, she doesn't use an element from Teyvat, because 1, she's from Conria, 2, she has abyssal powers, and 3, she now has, she has now merged with the shade of life. I really wouldn't want her to just be another basic playable character who, For example, an animal catalyst, like, like why? For her to just be a regular playable character using the power of, one of the elements of Teva, that would, for me, would be pretty disappointing. And we know how, Genshin likes to tie everything to the lore, down to, wind gliders and, you know, character skins has to be tied to some in-lore event. So it's just disappointing to see now when it comes to playable characters, they seem to be deviating from the lore or finding loophole bullshit excuse to not go all out and give these characters kits that they truly deserve, in my opinion. As well as if we were to extend that to other playable characters, potential playable characters in the future, who are not from Teyvat, for example, the other four sinners, the Shades, Renova, Istarat, um, Asmodee. Would these characters, if playable, just use an element from Teyvat? Granted, obviously, we do not know for sure, one, if these characters will be playable, or two, what their kits would be. Looking at the devs' past actions, I don't think it's far-fetched to assume that if any of these characters are playable, they would just slap a bullshit excuse and give them make the playable character use an element from Teyvat, which personally I just think is really disappointing if that were to happen. The second reason is that I felt that Genshin's combat had become stale to me. I started playing in 3.3, so early-ish to close to mid Sumeru, and I got into the Genshin community about a week or two later. And from what I could see, the player base was excited about Danger, the new characters that came with it, the introduction of the new element, the new reactions and the new team comps, and that seemed to last for a good couple of months, so to the point where, when we were closer to Fontaine, people started to get bored, myself included, of Danger. I remember when I went to Fontaine, after I unlocked the first statue of 7, I completely switched out my Danger team. I was just so tired of Danger. Obviously nobody forced me to play Danger, but, it was cheap to build and the power, was strong at the time, especially, Hyper Bloom. But I kind of sense that same sentiment in the player base where people had played Danger so much that people started to get tired of Danger teams. But the point was that, during that period for, from the introduction of Sumeru for a good while throughout Sumeru, the player base seemed excited about the combat, again because of, the new reactions and new team comps that came with Danger. And so I felt like, Genshin isn't a new game. It's not a 1-year-old game. It's not a 2-year-old game. Genshin is in its 5th year. So I felt like with the introduction of characters who are not from Teyvat or a new region, they need to do something major to spice up the combat. And what better way to do that than to introduce a new element? Personally, I don't care about the challenges that the devs face. I don't care about how difficult something is to implement. As a customer, I only care about the results and the product. And while the product was still good, I felt like the combat was stale. But going back to the comment that I saw where it said that the game didn't need new elements, it needed new reactions, I hadn't thought about it like that. I had just thought that we need new elements so we can have new reactions. I hadn't considered that you could have new reactions without new elements. So, shout out to that person who had made that comment. I don't remember where or who, and definitely shout out to the devs for, introducing lunar reactions in the upcoming 6.x patches with not cry. Give credit where credit is due. So in that vein, I guess my second reason isn't something to be that much concerned about, because they can always freshen up the combat with element new reactions, which is what the game's combat system is based on, elemental reactions. They can do this without necessarily introducing a new element. So, that's good. I'm glad that I didn't make this video back in early May when I had just seen Skirk's kit details, because since then I've been able to flesh out my thoughts some more, learn more information, seeing different opinions different perspectives. But all in all, I still think the main reason why I was disappointed still stands, and that's, for me, future potentially playable characters who are not from Tevat being locked with kids utilizing elements from Tevat. I'm going to make a part 2 video where I go through what I would hope to see for some of these characters like RANT, Istaroth, Renova, instead of them, if they are playable, utilizing elements from Tevat. So you can stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, a comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good YouTube stuff. And I will see you in the next video. Peace. I'm out.